Is the secret UFO crash site that Diana Pasulka visited a hoax? Let's dive in. If you're new to the channel, y'all, and you like content like this, please hit that subscribe button. We put out a new video every day, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. I do not miss a day. And of course, hit that like button, y'all. That really helps out the videos. So thank y'all so much for the support there, vetters. Of course, comment down below. What do you think of this revelation I teased at the end of yesterday's video? This, to me, is a bombshell, in my opinion. And we're going to dive into Tim Taylor, who I believe is potentially Mirageman 2.0, y'all. Not sure entirely. This is just theory. We're just going to dive in and take a look at some clips, a lot of clips, and see what we can put together here. So what's the main story here? Basically, Diana Pasulka, right, mentioned going to a secret UFO crash site with Garry Nolan in her book, American Cosmic. And she was taken there by a man named Tyler D, as he's referred to in his book. Now, it's since come out that his name is Tim Taylor. Chris Bledsoe, who also mentioned this Tyler D, the same person in his book, UFO of God, came out and said who it was, Tim Taylor. And I've covered Tim on this channel multiple times with different stories. He always pops up with something. It's always something crazy, right? So we're going to try to put all the pieces together here and see what comes about. Because I was in a recent Twitter space with someone who brought up a story that was quite fascinating, right? That contradicts entirely the story that Tim Taylor told Diana Pasulka. So not that Diana is lying about any of this, but that the source she used potentially could be using her and using many people in the community, right? What is going on, basically? What is going on with this Tim Taylor guy? You know, there's no interviews with him. He's sprinkled throughout the UFO community. He says a lot of crazy stuff to people, right? He takes people to crazy places, and he's well connected. So what is going on, right? So real quick, this is him right here, this guy. This is Chris Bledsoe. I don't know who this is. Here's another picture. Chris Bledsoe, right? So Chris could prove, yeah, this is the guy, right? And then right here, at NASA, because he works at NASA, this guy. Tim Taylor, here's Chris Bledsoe, right? They all came to NASA. Now, let's jump into what I heard about Tim Taylor's this secret UFO crash site that's in New Mexico. Okay, let's dive into this. So, you know what? I'm just going to play this just like I did yesterday.
Grant has brought this up 20 different times, and it didn't even click for me until recently. But Grant tells the story about...
She's talking about Grant Cameron, by the way.
Meeting up with Chris Bledsoe and the dog. Well, there's like a preface to that story, and it's still sort of centered around Bledsoe, but it's a bunch of them got invited to what they started calling the gathering. And it was just a few researchers and people interested in UFOs. They were all going to gather at a spot. Some of them were there to meet Bledsoe. Some of them were there to meet other people. It was just like a free-for-all. Grant was there. Tim Taylor was there. Bledsoe was there. I think Peter Robbins was there. Quite a few other people. It wasn't like a big secret thing. Well, Grant met Tim Taylor, had no idea who he was, and they just started talking. And it was Grant who told Tim Taylor where this gifting field was. He was like, yeah, I've been there. My friend Mark knows where it is, blah, 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 took it. And after that, it even took me a while.
So there you go, right? Allegedly, this Grant Cameron is the one that told Tim Taylor about this crash site, right? And Grant Cameron found out it from his friend Mark. Now, I inquired about Mark with this young lady right here, Nicole, who is super awesome. I'm going to be talking to her. I'm going to do a deeper dive on this story. I'm going to try to interview Grant Cameron and potentially Mark, this gentleman, Mark, who I don't want to out his name or anything like that. Not just yet. I don't know his name, his full name. I think I found it, but, I want to do this right, as I'm not just trying to blast somebody here on the channel. And if he wants to come out and tell the story, I would love to have him tell this story, because this potentially, with this Mark guy, is where this all originates. Diana Pasulka's, crash site story, right? With Garry Nolan and finding, materials there. This is a big deal, right? And there's conflicting stories about what is the origin of the site. And the timeline is quite interesting. So let's jump to this next part here. Just going to go into more detail about this. So again, Tim Taylor is potentially lying to Diana about how he found out about this site, because he told Diana that he had, been watching, he had access to the site for decades, and that it was handed down to him from another person, because the crash site was from the 40s, right? Now, the conflicting story is Mark and Grant are saying it's from Roswell. And Diana is told by Tim it is not Roswell. It's a separate crash. So again, just conflicting. But let's listen to this clip.
It's wild.
Do we know if a gifting field is like an archaeological site?
I don't.
This one we're speaking
That's a great
of.
question.
This one we're speaking of is allegedly one of the two Roswell crash sites. It's like where the one bounced before it crashed.
Oh, you see, Diana specifically made a point on Joe Rogan's interview to say it's not the Roswell crash. So that's interesting.
Because it's not the crash, it's the bounce.
Or, that it's not connected to Roswell. That would be an odd, detail to
is
say it.
Also the other one.
It's like she meant it's the bounce, but not the crash.
That'd be
That would be a
But
weird,
they call it, but the
weird
other
detail.
one too. The other one too is like known as the Corona one. So like there's the Roswell one that crashed, and everybody talks about Roswell, but there was two crashes involved with Roswell. The second one was found in 49, and that's the one that has the bounce site. That's the way I understand it anyways.
Guys, if you have theories
Sure.
on what a gifting field is, leave it in the comments. Go down there, like the space, and retweet it out. Vetted, go ahead.
No, I've never heard the term gifting field till just right now, actually. She calls it a donation site, and that's what I've heard multiple times. It's just donation site. I don't know. I just find this interesting. I find this Tim Taylor guy very interesting. He keeps coming up. Just made a video about him recently, right, where it was about all the recording devices he would have on himself and recording people and the Bledsoe connection.
My last
This is
snippet.
fascinating.
Have you heard about his protocols? I took a class with, or one of Diana Pasulka's class about the phenomenon or whatever, and she kind of went into this a little bit. The idea that Tim Taylor had these protocols, and they were all like very interesting, like drink lots of water, get lots of sunlight. She said a lot of it was about balancing like your electricity, like your own charge. It was very,
What?
it was so
Okay.
woo. It's so
Grant
woo.
talks about that too. Grant
Right?
talked about that too.
But then you hear the way that Chris Bledsoe talks about Tim, right? And he's like got all this admiration, and he's like, yo, this guy is like the top guy. They call him the Dragon during the launches. Like he's the guy who oversees the whole launch. Like he's in his own private area while these things are launching. He's looking at all these different cameras, and there's jets and stuff that are flying around every launch, and they have special cameras, and he's looking at those, and he's like, no one's allowed in the room. Like he's like, dude, this guy's top dog, dude. And you got to wonder how much of that is real and how much of it is inflated by Tim or by this maybe mechanism that's trying to insulate. And this is my terminology, right? That's how I see it. They could be trying to insulate Chris Bledsoe, from or against something. Like I don't know, but they throw him a lot of love.
Is it official government business, or is this just like a hobby for him? Instead of train cars, he's likes to talk to experiencers.
Now, what's your view on this, Patrick? Because we have.
So anyway, that's interesting. Let me play another clip of from the same space.
when did this happen with Grant on the timeline between this moment and when he had that moment with Bledsoe about the dog with the wound?
The gathering was over this whole like weekend. I don't know if it was an extended weekend, and Grant's thrown out a date of when it was. He was like, yeah, it was whatever. And I want to say it was around 2012 or 2013.
Remember those dates.
Actually,
saying,
I'm going for my book right now to see if I can just look up the date real quick, because I'm not even sure what part of Managing Magic it's mentioned in, because it's just a little blurb where he even writes about it. And Grant's written 22 books, so I was like, fuck, which book was it? And yeah, it was Managing Magic.
Let's assume just for a second as well that
He told it on our podcast, or our first X Space that Grant did just like 3 weekends ago. He told the version of the story. And that's when it all kind of crashed down for me. I was like, what?
I'll check that out. Patrick.
See, this is so interesting, right? Like, let's get to Diana's part of the story. Look, there's so many threads to pull here. There's so much. I could have made this video like 8 hours long if I got to pull together this web from Tim Taylor. So I'm kind of speeding through this to just, my main point is just the discrepancy about this crash site. And I'm going to keep pulling the thread from there, right? Because there's more about this guy. I'm telling y'all, Tim Taylor, someone's got to get an interview with this guy. Okay. We got to talk to this guy because he's saying a lot of things, in my opinion, that he should have to answer for, in my opinion, if he's going to influence, right, the UFO community this much and say these things and take people to secret crash sites. You know what I'm saying? Like, what? So this is going to be several different clips of Diana talking about her version of the story with Tim, okay? Again, these dates don't line up, right?
The danger was that parts exist, right? So things like this do exist, and there are anomalous materials. This is what I was finding out, and I think that this is what I'm an okay researcher. It's not like I would make this up, nor would I lie. I'm publishing with Oxford, so my reputation is at stake, right? So I'm doing the best I can to kind of adjudicate, like, am I being fed disinformation or, what's going on? Garry now will be able to identify by taking these parts back and analyzing them through his laboratories, whether or not they're engineered or not. And he's been doing that ever since. So these are the kinds of things that I would have found out. I think part of it was also that I was finding out that there was an oral tradition and that the perception management was very tight. Mm-hmm. And I think this is what they were afraid. But I've said this now publicly, so. But I did get harassed, though. I did get harassed, and it still happens.
Oh, how'd you get harassed?
So let's skip to other part. I just wanted y'all to hear that part about, she's got her reputation on the line, right? She's writing this. She's publishing with Oxford. This is very important to her. So in my opinion, I think Diana would want to know that where Tim actually found out about this gifting field. Right? Don't you think Diana would want to know this? That's a big deal. It's a big part of her book. It's a big part of her story, right? She brings Garry Nolan out to this site, right? And it turns out potentially Tim has been lying. If this is true, Tim lied to her about, the site, or he knew about it and just pretended not to know and Grant told him, which would be odd. So this guy, Mark, okay, who's a friend of Grant's, is the one that told Grant. Remember, Mark is kind of at the center of this. Who is this Mark guy? What does he know? How does he know about this gifting field in the States? He's from Canada, Winnipeg, right? How does he know about this field? And, does he know Tim Taylor? Maybe without having said anything. I don't know, right? Is there some connection? Tim Taylor finds it out from Grant Cameron, and Chris Bledsoe's there, you know. It's just all so unusual.
2014 that I actually start to meet the people, like the
2014. So Tim just finds out about this gifting field, right? Allegedly. Again, either he already knew and he just pretended and lied to Grant and Mark that he didn't know, or he is finding it out for the first time and then uses that with Diana and Garry, right? And just lies about the background of it. And if you have to think, if he's lying about the background of that gifting field, donation site, right, the secret UFO crash site, what else is he lying about? Again, Mirageman 2.0 here, y'all. Like, in my opinion, that is exactly what's happening with this Tim Taylor guy. You know, it sounds just like the Benowitz stuff, right, with Rick Doty. Especially the Chris Bledsoe stuff. Yeah, I think what you saw is an experience. And just like what Rick Doty would tell Paul Benowitz, yeah, I think what you saw was a UFO. Right? And then getting this author involved, Diana Pasulka, who then puts in her book, this huge book that the Game of Thrones producer, they're going to put this on TV. Right? And don't forget, Tim Taylor also tells Diana that this was part of an X-Files episode. This UFO crash site was used in an X-Files episode because the X-Files had an insider.
Affiliated people. Which,
now that I'm thinking about it, it has to be the later seasons. Because if Tim found out about it in 2012, 2013, right, from this gathering with Grant Cameron, right, where Chris Bledsoe's there and he, finds out about the gifting field, then he tells Diana about it, right, and whatever, right, and takes her and Garry, right. But this X-Files episode, right, I'm thinking it's one of the later seasons. There's been a lot of argument about which episode that we're talking about, but that would help narrow down if he knew about it or he's lying about that too. Do you see what I'm saying? It just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. He either lied to Grant Cameron or he lied to Diana Pasulka, because both can't be true. This Tim Taylor guy. Just saying. It was weird. Right?
And they show me some things, and they asked me to go to this crash retrieval site in New Mexico.
No, this is a recent crash?
Now, listen to what Diana just said. They asked me. So it's not just Tim Taylor. Right? It's not just Tim Taylor. Mirageman, there's just like, what is going on?
No, it's okay. So
great question.
This
Joe.
crash is part of a series of crashes that happened in the 1940s.
So the Roswell.
It wasn't Roswell, actually.
See, she says it wasn't Roswell. And remember, in the Skyfire News, Nicole, right? Nicole is saying, as far as she understands it in the story that's been told by Grant, right, it is a Roswell. It's the second Roswell. It's the bounce crash. So it bounced and then crashed. So that first, what you might call crash site, think of it like a car hitting a barrier on the highway and then flipping and going over here. You'd have that initial crash site, right? They're saying that's, right? That's a discrepancy. That's huge, right? Again, why lie about that? Why listen to what else Diana says?
It was one of the crash sites that's near. It's in New Mexico, but it's not Roswell.
So there was more than one crash in New Mexico.
Yeah, I think they
allegedly.
Allegedly, yeah. They said that there were probably 4.
They said. That's something we need to remember. This isn't just Tim. This is Tim and Co. So they said there were 4, probably 4. Right? Why the discrepancy? Why lie about that?
Maybe even more. I don't know.
What a bunch of shitty UFOs keep
I
crashing.
know. That's what. Well, they don't believe that they crashed. They use that term,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't think it's a crash. They think that it's. They personally, I'll tell you from a professor's standpoint, like their idea of this is that it's a donation. They call it the donation site. So they
Donation site, not giving field. Right? I mean, it's technically sort of the same thing, right? They're getting at the same thing, but coined new terminology. So who coined the new terminology? Is this Tim, right? Changing it, because I guess he didn't want to call it giving field, right? Because then that might connect it. So he calls it donation site. I don't know. Just find that interesting. Now, is it possible that Tim just, was like, knows about the site? Grant starts telling him about it, and Mark, this guy Mark knows, and he's just like, yeah, okay. Because then you would think, are Mark and Tim connected, right? Or not? Or he's just playing it and seeing who knows what? But then why wouldn't he use that with them, right? I don't know. Tim either lied to Grant or he lied to Diana about this crash site. And everything that goes on with it, the whole story of it. It's just none of it adds up. I used it in an X-Files episode. The Roswell, not the Roswell, another crash, right? Like it's been handed down from different people, right? Or he just found out about it, but Mark knows about it. This guy Mark from Canada knows about this site, right? Did Tim just think, oh, nobody's going to be able to trace this back, or I don't care if they do? Right. It's just very like, what's going on, dude?
that these were donated materials and they're going to get information, and they do. And
so real quick, anyway, that's me talking. I cut out my face here so y'all didn't see the picture of the Patrick and Patrick. All right, next clip here.
And that's how Tyler was able to create a lot of the...
Again, Tyler is Tim Taylor, just FYI.
Things that he created through, and he would fly these on the space shuttle, by the way, these experiments and so forth. It was very, very fascinating to me. I mean, I think anybody would be fascinated with it, to tell you the truth.
When you say fly these, you don't mean physical materials.
So he would have an idea that he would get through these protocols that I told you about. So he practices these protocols. And
the protocols you already heard about. He would get these ideas practicing the protocols, right? Balancing your electricity. So to get these ideas. So again, these are going to be other parts of Tim Taylor that are interesting, right? Besides this crash site. Because he claims to bring back biologics, right? And again, are these the same biologics that David Grush mentions? Is Tim Taylor one of David Grush's 40 witnesses? I think it's a complete possibility. And if that's the case, that's not good, in my opinion. I don't know. This Tim Taylor guy just sounds suspicious. I don't know how he wouldn't think that about other people too, if that makes sense. Like, he would understand how somebody would be suspicious of him if they knew all the stuff they knew, like we know about Tim now, right? How could he not understand that we would be suspicious? A normal person would be suspicious because none of this is adding up. Who's lying and what's going on? I don't know, but something ain't right. Clearly, none of this adds up. None of this makes sense. So anyway, this is Tim talking about. Anyway,
and
here.
It would be related to something that he would then want to fly on the space shuttle, because this was during the time the space shuttle was happening. And the space shuttle had anti-gravity environments. And
So he would fly up in the space shuttle, use the anti-gravity environments and fuse together certain things, because I guess it happens differently, and then come back down. And now that's classified as a biologics. Does that make sense? And it could be different materials. It doesn't necessarily mean, because when I hear biologics, I'm thinking life form of something alive, right? As we might think of it. But no, it can be fusing metals together. Ceramics, as Diana states, right? So I don't know. Just that's interesting.
kind of like ceramic metals. He created something. I actually wrote about this and published about it. Totally academic paper, so most general readers would never read it. It's because it has academic jargon in it.
Mm-hmm.
But I talked all about it.
Jamie's got something here. Researchers capitalize on micro.
So she even publishes some of Tim Taylor, a.k.a. Tyler D. from the book, and
Microgravity in space to accelerate drug discovery and development. That was one.
So developing drugs up there, that then becomes biologics. Just saying, that's an interesting detail note that I found interesting. I hope that's not the biologics that David Grosh is talking about.
We're blindfolded. We get out to the site.
So this is more her talking about the site.
Out. We were wearing like I guess there's rattlesnakes out there, and so we have to wear certain boots and things like that. So we get out, we take our blindfolds off, and the first thing I do is I look around because it looks really familiar to me, even though I've never been out there. And Tyler looked at me and he said, "Looks familiar, doesn't it?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "It's you've seen it in the X-Files." And I was like, "What?" He goes, they had an insider on their team. And I honestly thought, okay.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
what? I'm sorry, what? You can't see my face, but yes, I said that. Okay, what's going on here, y'all? What? I don't understand. Again, right? It's used in an X-Files episode. And one, why would he tell her that? Seems odd. Is it like a flex? It's just, everything seems so odd that this guy says to Diana, to Chris Bledsoe and his family. Sounds like to Grant Cameron. Who else, who knows who else Tim has spoken with, right? Gotten ideas from, gotten whatever, right? All right, let's go to the next clip here.
But that gets to your point. Like, how did we get this stuff? So he actually did have metal detectors that were configured for specific types of metals that he had these built.
Is there
Specific metal detectors going for specific metals. He had these built. Now, another thing that was interesting is Nicole in that Skyfire News. I recommend you check it out. I couldn't play the whole thing. I recommend you go check that out if you want to hear more about that story. But she goes on to say that, Grant and Mark, that guy Mark again, they had been to that site and they found like a beam out there. Like they found stuff too, right? Like a big beam, I find that interesting, right? Did they find frog skin too? Like, remember, Garry Nolan denied some of Diana's story after Joe Rogan, right? He was like, I made a video on it. Like, nope, never happened. I don't have that stuff. Because Diana says Garry took it all home with her and has that stuff. And he's like, nope, I ain't got nothing. I don't know what you're talking about. Now, again, that could be, he's probably just saying that to protect himself, right? Because, Diana, why are you saying that? You're you know what I mean? You're implicating me in this. But I don't know, right? Because basically she talked about a sheet. Okay, this is interesting. Okay. She's saying it's not Roswell, right? Remember, Nicole is saying it is Roswell, right? Now, Diana talks about in the Joe Rogan interview how she found this piece of metal that when crumpled up would go back to its original shape. And it was like frog skin-like, okay? Famously, there was a piece of metal from Roswell that did the same thing, right? So I'm just saying, right? It's so weird. This is so weird.
scientific term for these particular?
And sorry, I brought that up because that's the piece that Garry Nolan said, nope, I've never seen that. I don't know what she's talking about. Like, I've never seen that piece. I don't have that piece. I don't know what she's talking about. So Gary's denying that specific piece. Not all the pieces, just that specific piece, which is interesting, right? Like, why would Diana lie about seeing something like that? Because she said she saw it, not I was told about it. So I don't know.
Good types of metals.
They're called metamaterials.
Metamaterials.
Yeah.
Why?
I think.
How would he know metamaterials? All right, let's continue to go. All right. So anyway, I got links in the description. Go check out all that stuff for yourself. It's again, I could do this for hours. This is just another example of stuff Tim Taylor says to people that I find fascinating, right? He's kind of always building people up and adding affirmation, affirming them, their story, who they are, just like Rick Doty did with Paul Bendowitz and Linda Moulton Howe and who else knows, right? Whoever else he paid, right? And again, Rick Doty may say, I did it for my country. I did what I did. Okay. But it happened, right? And maybe Tim thinks the same thing. I'm just doing this for my country, national security. I'm protecting advanced tech that we have in NASA and, whatever. Because, Tim Taylor's a huge, big guy. He doesn't even have to go through airport security. He's well-connected, top security clearances, but he wants to, you know what I mean? So what's going on? Like, this is weird. And he was at one point Elon Musk's SpaceX handler, and he could currently still be. Think about that. He knows about secret crash sites, supposedly, and takes people there and brings back materials and has Garry Nolan go study them and has, different people. Again, and you've always heard Elon Musk comments about aliens, UFOs. If anybody would know, it would be me. Think about that. Potentially, if true, if everything Tim Taylor's saying is true and whatever, right, then Elon Musk quite literally, under his nose has had the evidence for aliens right underneath him with this guy, Tim Taylor, working with him. Right? Right there. Tim Taylor has the evidence that we're not alone, the smoking gun evidence, if it's true. Right? So this is just another example that he tells Chris Bledsoe's son. Just listen to the story. You'll get what I mean.
Dad has a dream that night that he's
saying his dad, Chris Bledsoe, had a dream. Okay, that's what his son is saying right now. Just to be clear on that.
On Mars.
Again, this is a dream. Okay, he's on Mars.
And he sees
He says dad, right? He's talking about his dad had a dream, right? Okay, this is me. Patrick, stop talking. Just explain this. Get to the clip here.
Bigfoot, or whatever this being is, killed.
Hang on.
And Bigfoot, or whatever this being is, killed itself on accident, the whole species, in a calamity. Just like a nuclear cataclysm, something of that nature, they were wiped out. And in his dream...
Nuclear. Oh, Patrick, stop interrupting this. I get it, guys. Now I get it. When you guys stop interrupting the videos. I get it. I need to pay attention to that more. Finding out in real time. That's just frustrating. So I get it. I'm doing it right now as we speak. I'm holy cow. I'm interrupting within interrupting. I'm in inception interrupting right now. But to get to, since this clip is all over the place. So he's talking about his dad having a dream, being on Mars, and seeing this Bigfoot species that they killed themselves in some sort of nuclear disaster, right?
The planet in shock and trauma through this cataclysmic event. And that the guardians who took my father, remember, this is a dream. The guardians who took my father whisked the billions of souls of these Bigfoot creatures who were once advanced, fashioned them a primitive body to be sort of like a therapy for their soul so that they could be rehabilitated, brought them to Earth, placed them here, allowed them to use their interdimensional whatever abilities. Well, why we can never catch them. This is all in a dream. Just that's important to know. And that they are slowly but surely being rehabilitated from the trauma of instant cataclysm. So Dad wakes up. He's like, oh my God, that's a weird dream. He goes and tells Tyler D, and Tyler looks at him and he said, how did you know that? And Dad said, I had a dream. And he said, you are the most informed person I've ever met. And that was it.
Again, so Tim Taylor, okay, aka Tyler D, is telling Chris Bledsoe, you're the most informed person I've ever met. How did you know that about this story of the Bigfoots being interdimensional beings? That's why you never catch them on Earth here. You know, they come do something in the woods. You see them walking by a river, and then they're gone. They can, because they're from Mars, apparently. Again, this is all in his dream, but he's insinuating that this really happened, right? That's the insinuation from this, is that this really happened. That there's a Bigfoot species on Mars. They destroyed themselves. They were then put, here on a more primitive body to heal their souls on Earth. Right. And Tim's basically affirming his dad, telling him, you're the most informed person I've ever met. How did you know that? Right. Like, think about that. That is such a Rick Doty thing to say. I'm just saying, man, Tim Taylor sounds like the next Rick Doty, y'all. Mirageman 2.0. And look, whatever their motivations, I'm not saying that Rick Doty or Tim Taylor have malicious or had malicious intentions for what they did. Okay. Yes, you could argue I did it for my country. It's what I was told to do, so that's what I did. Okay. Honestly, I can understand that. I can. But still, it's good to find out, right? So Tim Taylor is lying about all this because Rick Doty lied a lot. Now, he just says he did it for his country, right? To cover the real truth, right? You lie about it to cover the real truth. So is that what Tim Taylor's doing? Is Chris Bledsoe the most informed person he's ever met? That sounds interesting. Why wouldn't he then bring out Chris Bledsoe, right? And have him in every meeting and be talking about everything and want to know and study him more. Like actual study, not just the way they've done it. I don't know. I mean, Chris Bledsoe is one of the most investigated cases, right? People, his experience. And I guess it is pretty well investigated. I don't know. I just find this interesting, man. I don't know if I trust this Tim Taylor guy, man. I just don't. So look, what we're going to do is end on this great little segment that Jesse Michaels made in his latest documentary about Tim Taylor. Because again, I think Tim Taylor is at the center of a huge UFO story right underneath our noses. And nobody's talking about it. I don't know why. I know a lot of people are just focused on the day-to-day of what's happening in Washington, and I get that. But this is super important in my opinion. And I'm going to stay on the story. We'll come back to it. Again, I'm going to try to get an interview with Grant Cameron and potentially the smart guy and just see if we can get to the bottom of this, and get Nicole as well and have a conversation about this. So y'all tell me in the comments if y'all want me to do that. I mean, I'm going to do it anyway, but maybe what we could talk about. Give me some ideas, different questions to ask, I guess. Probably make a separate post for that, to be honest with you, later when that happens so that y'all, I can have them in one specific place. But yeah. Or what other ideas you might have for us about this, right? For Vetted. What can I do to help unleash the story? Should I, try to get an interview with this guy? I don't know how to reach him. I don't have any idea how to reach him. So I don't know. Maybe that's what I'll try to do. Let me see. I don't know. All right, y'all. Let's end on this clip from Jesse Michaels.
My last guest, Diana Pasulka, an incredible religious studies professor at UNC Wilmington, writes in her first book, American Cosmic, about a member of a secret space program she codenames Tyler.
It's Tyler, who's still a pseudonym for a person who is a mission controller and works in the Space Force.
I've personally protected Tyler's identity in every...
So secret space program, right? That's the allegation with Tim as well. There's a secret space program and he's a part of it. It gets weirder, y'all.
interview I've done until now, because this show isn't about doxing people, it's about substantive ideas. But at this point, his name is literally all over the internet, even in interviews with close to 1 million views. So I'll just mention it because it leads to maybe the trippiest connection I've made in this whole Townsend Brown saga. Tyler, from Diana's book, is a NASA mission controller named Timothy Taylor. Taylor wrote an autobiography in March of 2003 called Launch Fever. Before anybody knew who Taylor was, in 2014, Townsend Brown's daughter, Linda, wrote a review of Taylor's book. She writes, an engineer's firsthand experience of what it means to be a part of the space program. A charming legacy to his daughter and all of us. So what is Tim Taylor's connection with
2014, mind you. Think about that. That's the year. Why do these dates line up? But not in the way they're supposed to, right? Just saying. You know, that's the year Diana started talking with them. They. Very interesting, man.
Townsend Brown? Well, the son of frequent UFO experiencer and personal friend of Tim Taylor's, Chris Bledsoe, had some interesting things to say about the topic on Twitter. He wrote that Tim Taylor personally told my father he was in an elite group called the NASA Group, headed up by T. Townsend Brown. Also insinuated they had time travel technology. So what is Tim?
What? Right? They had time travel technology. He was part of a secret space group called the NASA Group with Townsend Brown. Tim Taylor, right? Some secret, again, time travel technology. Now we got Tim Taylor involved with time travel. I mean, can we just go down the list? That's what I'm talking about. What is going on? And remember, he records people. That's in his book, or in American Cosmic. That's how Diana found out. Like, and that he had sent her videos of people being recorded that they didn't know about, and these conversations, and it was just weird. Everything was just weird. And that he had always secret cameras on him and microphones and just hidden everywhere. It's like, who is this guy? Who is Tim Taylor? I'm saying, I mean, this is like the most captivating, frustrating person in the UFO community that I have come across, in my opinion. That no one has gotten access to publicly, we need an interview from this guy, in my opinion. Like, he is so connected in so many places. Nobody's talking about this guy. We need, Jesse he's bringing him up, right, at the end of the video that he made, because he also thinks it's important. I've been covering this for, a minute now, right? Like,
Taylor's connection with Townsend Brown. Was Brown the chief architect of a secret parallel space program? Townsend Brown had a UFO experience in Catalina as a teenager, is that right?
Yes, and I know the exact spot where he was standing. I used to ride my horse up that ridge. It approached him. It actually approached him.
And
he said that he learned so much standing there with that ball of light that he went back to his, which at the time was, he had a lab in Pasadena that was funded by his parents. So he had his own private lab, and he said he went to work immediately, and he worked. That was the beginning of his life's work. And he said that everything that he ever learned about his work, he learned instantly.
Wow.
Everything.
Physics has sadly not produced any forward progress over the...
So it's basically like he downloaded it, right? You've heard that term quite a bit. Again, links in the description for everything, right? That downloaded information. So is that why Tim Taylor has the protocols about balancing your electricity, right? And following this, and that's how he got his ideas. If you think about it, right? Remember, that's what Diana said. He, during using his protocols, which includes meditation, right, and water and getting sun, vitamin D, right? Doing that, he gets his ideas, right? That's how he had the idea to go up into space and do these experiments that were brand new. right? In zero gravity. So, I don't know. Is there some truth maybe to this, right? To Tim Taylor. And this is all to cover it up and just, I don't know, and bring these people in. It's an odd web to weave if it's true. This is an odd way to go about doing what you do, right? If Tim Taylor is being real. Because if this was found out, right, by Tim Taylor's superiors, wouldn't he lose his clearance, lose everything if this is true, right? They're like, dude, you're taking people to UFO crash sites? What are you doing? Right? You're in books. They're writing about you in books. You know? I don't know. Is Tim Taylor his real name? I don't know, y'all. Right? They went to the Vatican. Diana went to the Vatican with Tim Taylor as well. That is documented. There's pictures. And supposedly what they saw there and heard there, I mean, you know. Look, what I do, to conclude this episode, what I do think is that Tim Taylor is manipulating the situation with everybody, right? With these people. She's connecting with Diana, Chris, these other people, right? The Bledsoes, whoever else he's interacting with. Grant Cameron, right? That whole thing. But what's the truth behind it? I don't know. It's murky. Is there a real phenomena that he's protecting? Or is it he knows there is no phenomena and he's trying to help cover up our own advanced tech or whatever? Does it make sense? Like for national security? I don't know. Because he does things that, you know, he's gone deep. He's Donnie Brasco at this point if you know, it's not true. Because he's living this life day to day like this. You know, that's, you know, he's gone full Daniel Day-Lewis if it's not true. Because Rick Doty did not do that, right? Rick Doty's was very like, you know, like cheap Goodfellas style. You know what I mean? Like, just like paying people, and you know. This is on a whole nother level. Right? And he's being connected to people, or at least he's saying he is, to Townsend Brown, right? Like before Townsend Brown is ever really big in the conversation, because Jesse Michaels is the one really bringing him out into the topic, right? So that's an odd connection to make. And it was probably years ago that happened. And who knows all the things that have been told. And why wouldn't Tim be contacting the Bledsoe saying, hey, dude, stop saying that stuff about me? Or does he think, let him say it. They can't connect that back. I have deniability. I'll just deny I said that. Again, I don't know, man. So, look, I look forward to potentially having a conversation with Grant Cameron, maybe the smart guy. That's who I really want to talk to, as well as Grant Cameron and Nicole as well, right? Do a podcast, maybe all together. Talk about this. Just open to it all, right? Maybe get Chris Bledsoe in there too. Dude, come on, y'all. Would that not be great? Chris Bledsoe, Grant Cameron, Mark, Nicole, me. Let's go. Let's talk about Tim Taylor specifically. That's it. Just him and the implications behind that. And this crash site in New Mexico. Are those materials real? Is that from Roswell? Is it not? I know this video is very kind of all over the place, and I apologize. But that's how the story is, you know? It's hard to put all this together, to be honest. And more work needs to be done. So just curious to, read everyone's comments on this, and, we'll go from there. What video tomorrow? I don't know. There's a lot of stuff to cover. The Cat Williams on Joe Rogan, they talked a lot of UFOs, and that was great, man. I laughed. So I want to do a video on that, but I don't know. We'll see what's coming up. Some story out there about David Grush's op-ed potentially having to be reviewed by Arrow first before it goes out. That's interesting. And potentially that's what Lou Elizondo's book as well. Like Arrow is now going to be part of Dopser, or Dopser would use Arrow, you know, potentially. But, you know, they shed some light on that, you know, that's not too unusual as well. So who knows? I don't know. We'll see what kind of video to do tomorrow. Anyway, all right, y'all. Goodness gracious. This was a long video. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Remember, every day's a gift, y'all.